student bodies of the Faculty of Science, University of Colombo. Since the establishment of WhatsApp, we have been doing various projects like community-related projects, workshops, webinars with the aim of promoting awareness and the interest for plant science, while providing a platform for our members to improve their soft skills. As a result of COVID pandemic situation with the transition of operation of university into online platform, the site of webinar series was initiated. Through SciTalk, we expect to provide a platform mainly for our undergraduates to listen and grasp knowledge from our very own alumni members. So today, as we speak of 8th session of SciTalk webinar series, I warmly welcome Dr. Niroshani Apitavalage. She has completed her PhD in plant molecular biology in Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo in 2002. As well as she has completed her postdoctoral fellowship at University of Geneva, Switzerland and International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, New Delhi, India. Dr. Niroshani has served as a senior lecturer at the Institute of Biochemistry, Molecular Biology and Biotechnology of University of Colombo. Also, she was one of the research scientists at University of Toronto, Canada and Royal Botanical Gardens, Kew at UK. Without further ado, I invite Dr. Niroshani Apitavalage to conduct her presentation for our enthusiastic audience. To minimize any disturbances during the session from the audience, please switch off your videos and mute your mics. If you have a question, please wait until the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Madam?
Yeah. Trying to share the share screen. Good evening. In this webinar titled New Platform for Phylogenomics, I would like to share my experience that I have gained from Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew working on a phylogenomic project. So I will start this talk with general phylogenomic information and will go in depth of the technology later. So what is phylogeny? Phylogeny is studying evolutionary relationships between organisms. So the taxonomy is identification, naming, and classification of organisms. Systematics is the study of organisms with the purpose of deriving their relationships. So phylogenetics is part of systematics that addresses the evolutionary history and relationships among or within groups of organisms. So a phylogenetic inference is the practice of reconstructing the evolutionary history of related species by grouping them. So this is a very familiar picture for, I think, for almost all the biologists. This is a phylogenetic tree. So phylogenetic tree is the visual representation of evolutionary history of organisms. As time passes, new species evolve from earlier ones like this. So this is the ancestor of all the taxa seen here. And the tree repeatedly branches until we reach the present time when there are many species descended. Like these are the current available species or descendants. So I thought it's better to go through these common terms frequently used in my talk as well as in most phylogenomic studies. That's why I went through these very simple common terms. So if we look at the evolution of phylogeny, at early taxonomic systems, they are called artificial systems because they had no good theoretical basis. They grouped according to morphological characters. such as measuring and quantifying phenotypic properties of representative organisms. These are a few examples for early taxonomic systems. This is called Linnaeus' system of sexual classification for plants. Carl Linnaeus, he grouped flowering plants into 24 groups according to their sexual reproductive systems. And this is Charles Darwin's Tree of Life. When come to modern system of classification, in the 18th century, Carl Linnaeus published a system for classifying living things, which has been developed into the modern classification system. It has a hierarchical naming structure and has 8 main levels from kingdom to species. It means kingdom is very general group, and when come to species level, it is very specific, and the species have very unique characters too. So when talk about phylogenetics, historically, this was done using quantitative morphological data. As I said before, the measuring and counting the phenotypical characters or the reproductive organs. So the modern phylogenetic methods rely more heavily on DNA sequence data. So because of this, the modern phylogenetic methods help to understand the evolution of species from their common ancestor. The novel phylogenetics is called molecular phylogenetics. This helps to understand the plant evolution at widely varying scales and changed classification substantially. Today, the botanists are examining DNA or RNA of plants to discover their relationships. That's what actually we do. So because of this, we are able to understand the relationships of plants or any other organisms based on their genes rather than based on their appearance. So the use of the genetic or the DNA structure, the structure of molecules to gain information on an organism's evolutionary relationships using molecular phylogenetics in deeply. So the genetic and hereditary molecular differences in DNA sequences are analyzed throughout various branches in the tree of life. So at early stages of molecular phylogenetics, Sanger sequencing was the base of generating sequences of DNA or the genes. So the Sanger sequencing was used to sequence either nucleotide sequences encoding genes or use those DNA sequences to get the amino acid sequences encoding proteins. These are some of the widely used DNA sequences. This is ribosomal DNA, mitochondrial DNA, nuclear ribosomal internal transcribed spaces. So these are commonly used Sanger sequencing, the commonly used genes in Sanger sequencing. There are many phylogenetic trees or the classification systems have constructed using the Sanger sequencing of phylogenetically important genes. There are so many classification systems are available. So I have chosen Chase et al. It's called the Angiosperm phylogeny group. This is widely used classification system in plant in phylogenetics. So this phylogenetic tree shows the evolution of angiosperms according to the Angiosperm phylogeny group 2013 version. But the problem is still there are so many gaps and failures in these classification systems. So we failed to give a correct or the accurate position of a species or a genre in the tree of life. According to the data available at Royal Botanical Garden and World Checklist of Vascular Plants, it says the sequence data is available only from 31% of 350,000 species of vascular plants. This is even less than one third of all the vascular plants on Earth. It means 69% of our vascular plants have no correct place in the tree of life. So it is important to have a cost-effective, very reliable, and efficient method to get the phylogenetically to get the sequences of phylogenetically important genes to place these species in the correct position of the tree of life. So next generation sequencing, it is also known as high throughput sequencing, became the solution. So invention of next generation sequencing has increased the number of sequences produced in a major scale because next generation sequencing is a technology that reads DNA at high speed and it produces large amount of sequences from multiple samples at very high throughput and at a high degree of sequence coverage. And next generation sequencing is, because of those reasons, next generation sequencing can be considered as a reliable and efficient technology in many fields of studies, including phylogenomics. So after next generation sequencing has invented, it expanded number of DNA regions available for phylogenetic inference. So these are the NGS is widely applied in biodiversity study, in population genetics, in barcoding, or in ecological investigation, in addition to phylogenomic studies. The genomic data can be obtained from any plant species, regardless of the proximity of the designing of the primers or the markers. It's easily can obtain genomic data with the use of next generation sequencing. So under this section, I would like to discuss very briefly about a few high throughput sequencing or next generation sequencing methods widely used in phylogenetic studies. So I thought it's better to discuss a few of other next generation sequencing methods as a comparison to the method that I'm going to discuss very in detail and the method that I have used in the phylogenomic project I have worked on. So one of these technique is called restriction site associate DNA sequencing. This is a restriction site associated sequencing method. This is an efficient and cost-effective method compared to many other sequencing methods to generate single nucleotide polymorphisms for lower level phylogenetic studies. But the thing is, the RAD sequencing markers are exclusive to taxonomy group for which they were developed. Because of this reason, the application of RAD sequencing is restricted. So the other widely using NGS method is called the transcriptome sequencing or RNA sequencing. In this method, the RNA is sequenced, since RNA is sequencing, it reduces the cost of whole genome sequencing and increase the efficiency in both library construction and sequencing. The reason is in transcriptome sequencing, we construct the cDNA library instead of whole genome library. But transcriptomes are not the most cost-effective and reproducible source of data because assembled transcripts include a lot of multi-copy gene families. Usually, the multi-copy gene families are not very phylogenetically informative. So, it is because of that, it is not a very good method in phylogenomics. Another thing is, because we are using RNA, the same genes may not be expressed in the same tissues for all targeted taxa. That is, it's also a drawback of transcriptome sequencing. And the reproducibility is less, and it causes to lose a lot of missing data will cause a problem. Another main problem or the major drawback of transcriptomic sequencing is to isolate RNA or the transcriptome of a tissue. It is required to have flash frozen fresh tissues. Otherwise, the RNA is damaged. So, because of this reason, it is not possible to apply transcriptome sequencing for extremely rare, extinct, or ancient samples for which only herbarium specimens available. So because of that, transcriptome sequencing also not the very good solution to sequence large amount of organisms or the individuals. So another method is called the target enrichment method, also known as target sequence capture, target capture, or anchored hybrid enrichment. It's in different names in different publications. That's why I thought it's better to give some other names as well. But mostly this is the very common name, the target enrichment method. There are several methods of target enrichment are available. These two are most commonly used. One is called the multiplex PCR-based target enrichment method, or it's called amplicon sequencing, or the other one is called hybrid capture-based enrichment. So I'm going to talk or discuss very in detail about this hybrid capture-based enrichment method. This is the technique that I have used to get the sequences of 14,000 genera of flowering plants to construct the tree of life. So in hybrid capture-based target enrichment method, sequencing of target enriched genomic libraries. To capture the target genes, the probes are used. So the probes will selectively capture a large number of low copy nuclear orthologs. This method has a high sensitivity, specificity, and a uniformity of coverage, and the reproducibility is also very high. So hybrid capture-based target enrichment lets researchers target regions to their specific research interests. Not only phylogenomic studies, this method is applicable vastly in any area of biodiversity or in population genetics, so any area of research studies. And this has a high ability to identify novel variants. compared to many other methods, this is quite like it's a cost-effective method for obtaining large data sets for phylogenetics from diverse sources. And the biggest advantage of hybrid capture-based target enrichment is this is widely applied to herbarium specimens. I would like to share some detail of a very old herbarium specimen. You can see the state of this herbarium specimen. This was collected in 1815. So our group of scientists managed to extract DNA out of this highly damaged plant tissues, and you can see the DNA, it's highly degraded, and this spectrophotometric picture shows the degradation level of the extracted DNA. But with this highly degraded DNA, we managed to produce the library, genomic library of this. So, and managed to recovered 47 genes from this endangered plant with use of the probe set designed by the scientists in our group. So then the target enrichment method is supposed to be a very quite reliable and efficient method in next generation sequencing and applicable in phylogenetics. So in target enrichment method, first of all, we have to design the target capture probes. So they are called baits. It's like fishing in a pool. So these are the baits. So these are our DNA probes. So we are going to capture the target sequences with the use of these probes. So these probes target protein coding genes, and the length is about 80 to 120 base pairs. These probes can be either DNA or RNA. And other thing is, these probes or the baits, they are biotinylated and can be recovered using streptavidin coated bead. This is, I will discuss in detail about the recovery of the beads, recovery of these targeted sequences in detail later. So when designing these probes, we always target low copy orthodox genes. So let's see what are these orthologs and why the ortholog genes are important in phylogenomic studies. Because orthologs are genes in different species that evolved from a common ancestral gene by speciation. And orthologs retain same function during course of evolution and are generally expected to have high phylogenetic information. So that's why we are targeting these ortholog genes when probes are designed. And low copy genes are supposed to be having more phylogenetic information than the high copy genes. So that's why we are targeting low copy ortholog genes. And when you are designing the probes, you require to have some genomic resources or some available DNA sequences. We use those available genomic resources to design our probes. And also, the designing of probes is depending on your research interest or the research question you are going to address. These probes can be specific to a narrow taxonomy group. or this is an example for a narrow taxonomy group probes, or they can be designed to work universally across larger groups. So the Angiosperm 353 probe set is designed to capture the target sequences, or it's designed to work on across Angiosperm phylogeny. So this is a universally applied in all Angiosperms. So before I go further about talking about the technology, I would like to talk briefly about the phylogenomic project that I have involved at Royal Botanic Garden, Kew. The project is called Plant and Fungal Tree of Life, or PAFTOL. The objective of this project was sequencing. It's approximately 14,000 angiosperm genera and 8,200 fungi genera by using high throughput sequencing. Approximately there are 14,000 angiosperm genera are found on Earth and 8,200 fungi genera. I have involved to the angiosperm part of the tree of life. So we had a group of scientists, specialized scientists, to involve in to sequence these 14,000 angiosperm genera and to construct the tree of life. So this is actually a huge project and worked. It was 5 years project, and now it's over. And we managed to with that all the a lot of publications have come out, and the last final tree of life is still on that, still working. So the aim was sequencing all these genera and construct angiosperm tree of life. So first we had as the pilot project, the first thing we had to design the probe set to capture the phylogenetically important genes across the angiosperm. So as I told before, to design these probes, we need some available DNA sequences. So we use, there is a plant project, it's called 1000 plant project. The 1000 plants are sequenced, but it was transcriptome data. This is the phylogenetic tree constructed with the use of transcriptome data from 1000 plant project. So we used transcriptome data from 650 species across the angiosperm to generate this angiosperm 353 probe set. So this is named as angiosperm 353 because this can be used across angiosperm, and these probes target 353 genes across angiosperms. So this probe set targets 350 genes from low copy protein coding nucleorthogs and can be used to obtain genomic data from any flowering plant, regardless of phylogenetic proximity to model species. So that is very important because can be used in any flowering plants. And this is applicable in not only in phylogenomic studies, since this is applicable in all angiosperms, you can easily use these probes in all types of biodiversity studies, in population genetics, in barcoding, or in ecological investigations. I would like to talk about another next generation sequencing method that's mostly combined with other next generation sequencing method. It's called genome skimming. The combination of target enrichment and genome skimming is called HideSeq. in genome skimming is very cost-effective method because it's a low pass and shallow sequencing method, and it produces fragments of DNA. They are called genome skims. These genome skims contain information about high copy fraction of the genome. So this is the reference. It's okay. Sorry. Yeah, this is a reference of, if you want to know in detail about HiveSeq, this reference is good to refer. So these genome schemes contain information about high copy fraction of the genome. It's like they consist of ribosomal DNA or the plasmid genome and mitochondrial genome or the nuclear repeats like microsatellites, transposable elements. So the combination of target enrichment and genome skimming allow to obtain, as so far as we discussed, the target enrichment, we targeted low copy nuclear data, and with target enrichment, when you combine genome skimming, that targets the high copy nuclear and plastome data. So this help to give very good, very efficient and accurate set of data. And plasmid sequences can be obtained either by concurrent sequencing of unenriched libraries or by reconstructing plasmid genes in silico from off-target reads. So because of that, HiveSeq is useful in plant systematics and evolutionary studies, combination of the target enrichment with the genome skimming. So I would like to discuss in detail of the target enrichment method. So this is the workflow of my next step of my talk: the sampling, DNA extraction, library preparation, hybridization, and sequencing. So sampling and DNA extraction. So let's go to slide. So our group of research scientists decided to select one species from each genus of angiosperms or the flowering plants, because this is aim is sequencing 14,000 genera. So we selected only one species from each genera. So we used fresh tissues or silica dried tissues or the tissues from herbarium specimen to extract DNA. The fresh tissues mostly extract available from the living collection of Kew Gardens, and silica dried tissues also. We had a DNA bank at Kew Gardens, so mostly the silica dried tissues were available in DNA bank. If not, we cooperated with some other botanical gardens and universities to obtain the required tissue samples. The herbarium specimen same from the Kew herbarium or some other herbariums, but all the specimens were evaluated by a special taxonomy a scientist. So before apply one DNA extraction method, we had to evaluate and find the best DNA extraction methods, more efficient and cost-effective, to applicable in our project. So we, among all the extraction methods we tried, CTAP and Chiagen DNA extraction methods were identified as most cost-effective and efficient methods. Because this picture also shows that these are the DNA extracted from silica dried samples with the Chiagen DNA extraction kit, and this is even the difficult herbarium gave quite a lot of DNA with the help of CTAB DNA extraction method. So we use CTAB modified protocol for silica dried and herbarium specimens. The reason was the CTAB extraction method is less expensive and it gives high yield, but the problem is it is time consuming protocol. When come to Qiagen DNA extraction kit, this is good for fresh tissues and silica dried tissues, but this is good because this is less time consuming and give high yield of DNA, but this is expensive method. So after the extraction of DNA, the next step is the purification of DNA. So you can use many different purification DNA purification method, but we have chosen SPRI beads DNA purification method as more efficient method in our project. Yeah, I will explain you how the SPRI beads work. SPRI beads are paramagnetic particles. It means it gets the magnetic property when the beads keep on a magnetic stand. So this is the structure of the SPRI bead. It has a polystyrene core and magnetite, and outer cover is made out of carboxylate modified polymer coating. In the presence of polyethylene glycol and salt, this is called the magic mix. So in the presence of polyethylene glycol, the negatively charged DNA will bind to the carboxyl groups on the bead surface. So the polyethylene glycol and the salt mixture is very crucial. So this gel picture will show you how did we recover our DNA with the use of SPRI beads. So this lens shows the DNA, all the fragments of DNA, and no SPRI bead is added. So you can see when you observe all the lanes, you can see gradually when the volume of SPRI bead is going down, and the number of the fragments, the sizes of the fragments start disappear. So these are the DNA retrieved from the SPRI beads. So now you can see the minimum of 1.5 times of SPRI beads is enough to retrieve all the DNA fragments in your DNA mix. So even the 1.5 times SPRI beads is sufficient to get the 100 size base pairs. So in DNA purification, we need to recover all the DNA fragments in our DNA mix. So in our study, we cleaned our DNA mix with use of 1.5 times of SPRI beads. This is volume wise. It means like volume of, according to the volume of the DNA mix, the SPRI bead volume is decided. 1.5 times of the DNA volume. So let's see, if you want only the DNA fragments above 500, the 0.5 times of SPRI beads volume is enough. So SPRI beads DNA purification is very efficient. The wastage is very, very less. So even if you have very low concentration of DNA, you can recover like 70 to 80% of DNA out of your mixture. Let's say now the DNA, we have purified DNA. Now next step is we need to check the quality and the quantity of our DNA. The quality is checked on agarose gel, or if the concentration of our DNA is very low, we go for spectrophotometric method. It's called a tape station. This is very sensitive machine to detect very low concentrations of DNA. The quantity of DNA is checked on either qubit using either qubit or contrast machines. So this gel picture shows the quality of DNA. So these are the extracted DNA can be either good quality, high molecular weight DNA like these ones, or they can be poor quality, highly degraded DNA. So this is okay. These are degraded but still good. But these DNA are highly degraded, mostly from herbarium specimen DNA are like this. So still we can use these highly degraded DNA in target enrichment capture to retrieve some genes out of this degraded DNA. Now we have either high quality, high molecular weight DNA or highly degraded DNA. So the next step is we need to shear this or we need to get the correct size of uh, our DNA to go further. So if it is high molecular weight DNA, we have to shear this DNA to get the correct size. Or if it is highly degraded, as I shown before, sometimes you don't have to do the shearing. Now I will show you. So this is the fragmented DNA or the sheared or degraded DNA, whatever, it's a mixture of sizes. So we need to repair the ends for adapter ligation. The adapters are ligated according to the compatible with the sequencing platform. So after adapters are ligated, as you can see here, this is a mixture of fragments. So like all different sizes are available because we just share DNA and all sizes are in the mixture. So to go further, we need to do the size selection. So the size selection also is done with the use of SPRI beads, the same beads that we have used to purify our DNA. That's why I said the polyethylene glycol and sodium chloride is magic mix, because with use of the same beads, you can recover the required size fragments out of a mixture of DNA fragments. So these are the fragmented DNA, the sheared DNA. Let's see if we want to isolate only, this is the 500 base pair size. If we need to isolate only this size fragment for our library construction. So it means we need to get rid of all the fragments above 500 and all the fragments below 500. We need only the range 400 to 500. So this is done with the double addition of SPRI beads. So so you can decide the volume of SPRI beads adding according to the volume of your DNA sample. And you can use the gel picture I showed you before to decide the volume, the ratio of the volume of SPRI beads. So I will tell like briefly. So to get rid of the above fragments, when you add the beads, the first bead addition the big fragments will bind to SPRI beads, and 500 and below sizes will remain in the solution. So at the first addition, we get rid of the SPRI beads, but save the solution. So the second addition, so you the second addition, and then at the second addition, then this 500 range DNA fragments will bind to SPRI beads, and all the fragments below 500 will remain in the solution. So now after the second addition, you recover the beads, keeping the tube on the magnetic stand, but you throw away the supernatant. So after washing the beads, you can recover the 400 to 500 range DNA fragments to either to water or TCDTA. So this is how we recovered the required size of the fragment with the use of size selection. Now, this is our size selected DNA fragments. Now, the next step is amplify this size selected DNA fragment with the use of primers of the selected primers for the compatible to the sequencing platform. So at the end of the PCR amplification, you get the large number of copies of the final enriched library. So this is called the final enriched library. Now let's move how the bait or the probe hybridization capture the target DNA fragments out of the mixture of DNA fragments in our tube. So in this picture, the green fragments are our target sequences. So these are the probes. As I said before, they are biotin labeled. So these biotin labeled probes and the DNA mixture allow to hybridize. Like it's like overnight hybridization. So the biotin labeled baits will hybridize to the target genes, and these target genes, now the next step is once these probes attach to the target sequences, how can we recover only the target sequences? For that purpose, that's why we label our probes with biotin. These biotin labeled probes can be recaptured by streptavidin coated magnetic beads. I will show you how the streptavidin coated magnetic beads work on biotin labeled probes. So this picture, the streptavidin coated magnetic beads are also paramagnetic particles. So these beads are covalently coupled to a highly pure form of streptavidin. So streptavidin has an ability or can bind to the substrates, including nucleic acid. So we use this ability of streptavidin binding to biotin to capture the targeted sequences attached to the bind to the probes. So when you keep the tube on a magnetic stand, you can recover the beads, and the beads from beads you can recover the sequences. So now you isolated the beads. It means you have only the target sequences. So you isolate, now you wash the non-targets away and keep the target sequences and amplify these sequences to get the final enriched target sequences. Now the next step is get the sequences of amplified enriched libraries. We used Illumina MiSeq and HiSeq platforms. The sequences are available after 1 to 3 days. They produce millions of DNA reads between the sizes 200 to 600 base pairs. So far I talked about getting the DNA sequences with use of from scratch, like you extract DNA and you make the make the libraries, and then you hybridize your probes and extract the target sequences to get the sequencing data. But it is possible to get your target sequences from public available DNA sequences. So it's called the public data mining. Our PAFTOL group didn't sequence the didn't sequence the plants which have publicly available data. So instead of sequencing these plants, we used our angiosperm 353 probe set to mine publicly available genomic data. So you can mine the NCBI, it's free, to get your target sequences or the target genes. And PAFTOL group also obtained the gene sequences from 1000 plant project gene sequencing data. So the genes were retrieved from assembled transcript sequences or coding sequences. So the next step is, now you have all the sequencing data, but the next step is the data analysis, data validation, and construction of phylogenetic tree. So the PAFTOL, so I'm not a bioinformatician, so I involved in this project up to this point until we get the sequencing data from Illumina. So from now onwards, we had a specialized bioinformaticians in our research group. They analyzed all the reads until construction of phylogenetic tree. But I can give you all the computer programs that we have used to recover our data and to recover the targeted gene sequences with the help of angiosperm 353 genes, and all the information of angiosperm 353 probe set. And I have extracted the sequence of this flowchart from the reference, from this reference, Baker et al. 2021. William Baker was the group leader of our PAFTOL group. And you can refer this reference. It has all the websites, all the links, and all the information, the program analysis that you can use in your own research project. So this is a part of a phylogenetic tree that we have constructed. I extracted this from Moran et al. So this is a part of the Mertale order and constructed using this angiosperm 353 probe set. So the Q Tree of Life Explorer, this is the website we have created, the PAFTOL group created, through which our data and all corresponding tree of life can be interrogated and downloaded. The sequencing data of angiosperm 353 probe set and the methodology, the sampling, all the sequences of we generated everything available in the Tree of Life Explorer website. And if you want to get the raw reads of Illumina of our project PAFTOL, they are also available in European Nucleotide Archive under this project number. And and recovered gene sequences for each sample are presented in gene-wise or species-wise fashion and are available via the Tree of Life Explorer or RBGQ Secure FTP site, together with the gene alignments and trees. So, this actually, I think once you get the sequence data of the sequences of angiosperm 353 probe set, you can start your own project, especially who are specialized in bioinformatics. It can easily mine the publicly available sequencing data to apply in your own research. So with that, we come to the last slide of my and end of the presentation. I hope I have given you some insight into the subject. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them with best of my ability. Thank you. And these are the references I have used to prepare my presentation, and most of the references are I can help if someone wants some help to find in these references. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for very informative, interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Now it's time for Q&A session. If you have any question, you can direct it to our speaker. You can unmute yourselves and ask the question, or you can send your question through the chat box as well.
Madam?
Yes.
Madam, I'm from third year. Madam, can I please know, like after DNA purification, how the sharing is done?
Yeah, we had a small machine called Quaris. So it's like it's it sonicate DNA. So it's like a vibration technology. It's Quaris.
Okay, madam, thank you.
Yeah.
Madam, thank you very much for that wonderful talk. I have a question, madam. Just this is a clarification. So your targets, are they like they are only gene like coding sequences, or does that include intergenic sequences as well?
The only coding sequences, protein coding sequences were the targets. Yeah. No introns
Thank you,
included.
madam. And the other thing is, madam, now is there, for example, now you constructed this tree for angiosperms, and I think there are some other projects as well, like Open Tree of Life. They have their own trees that are constructed. So compared to those trees, so here the value is that they are accurate in case the methodology that you use, isn't it? So can you comment on the accuracy and why this method is better?
Yeah, it says like we target quite a lot of genes.
Yeah.
It's like 353 genes, and yeah, this says the results, the reproducibility and the efficiency is high in this target enrichment technology. That's why it says like this is a more efficient, quite efficient technology in classification in taxonomy.
Okay, madam. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And Dr. Niroshini, thank you for that informative presentation. I'm Anushka here by the way. So I have a small question. So you said we can use degraded DNA even for the target capturing. Yeah. But then can we, with degraded DNA, is there a chance to lose some of the probes?
Yeah,
how
of
that
course,
affect the tree construction there?
Yeah, it is. We lose. We can't recover all 353 genes out of very highly degraded DNA. That's why the slide I showed, it's like old, we had very highly degraded DNA and we managed to recover only 47 genes out of 353.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that
it's the-
might affect the tree as well then, no?
yeah, of course, yes. It's then must be probably the place you keep couldn't be the very accurate place in the tree, the
Okay.
species.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam, I am Tinali Hansi, a third year student.
Yeah.
Madam, we catch genes using probes in PAFTOL project. Madam, can you please explain what are these genes and what based on what we select these genes to target?
I can't remember. I can't remember the name of the genes that we have chosen to prepare our probes. I think all the details are available in the Q Tree of Life Explorer. If you log, it's like a free website. You can go and check. But all the informations are available in that website. Otherwise, specifically, I can't tell these genes we use the names of those genes. No, I don't know.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam.
Madam. Hello.
Hello, yeah.
Yes, madam. I am Malit, madam. I am president of BOTSOC.
Yes.
Thank you, madam, for that informative lecture, madam. Thank you for your participation and kind request, madam.
Yeah.
Accepting our request, madam.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your presence, madam. And thank you for that informative lecture, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam. And thank you for Katyachi, madam, for contacting you, madam. Thank you, madam.
Okay. It seems to be there are no more questions. So thank you everyone for your questions. So it's time to conclude the session. Before that, I would like to thank the speaker, Dr. Niroshini Epitavalage, for her valuable time and the knowledge and experiences that she has been shared with us. I think our audience got the maximum benefit of the presentation. Once again, thank you, madam, for being the speaker of today's CyTalk webinar session. Also, I would like to thank on behalf of WhatsApp to all the lecturers of Department of Plant Sciences, Faculty of Science, University of Colombo, and especially to Dr. Anushka Vikramasinghe, Senior Treasurer of WhatsApp, and to Dr. Khatri Arachi for this invaluable opportunity provided for us. So, this is the end of 8th CyTalk webinar session. Good day to you all and thank you for joining with us today. Let's meet again at the next webinar of CyTalk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.